I think this country was built on gangs. You know, I think this country still is run on gangs. Republicans, Democrats, the police department, the FBI, the CIA, those are gangs. You know what I mean? The correctional officers. I had a correctional officer tell me straight up, we the biggest gang in New York State. Straight up, you know what I mean? So this whole country is built on gangs. We just have to not be so self-destructive about it. Organize, you know.
But the violence,
but it's violence in America. What did the USA just do flying to Bosnia? We ain't got no business over there. You know what I mean? It's the same thing. How can they tell us not to have gang? You know what gang violence is, mostly? And the people don't want you to hear this. Somebody shoots your family member. So of course you retaliate. You know what I mean? Same thing the U.S. does, except nobody even shot their family members.
Israeli airstrikes continued into the early hours of this morning. 130 targets across the Palestinian Gaza Strip, Israel's military said, releasing cockpit video of the operation. Palestinian officials say 24 people, including 9 children, died. Israel says 15 were members of the militant group Hamas. A mother and her son were killed, this man says. Israel's prime minister declaring a red line was crossed with hundreds of rockets fired from Gaza, 6 targeting Jerusalem, and overnight 2 apartment buildings hit in Ashkelon. 3 were injured with different levels of severity, says this Israeli police officer. The attacks followed days of unrest in Jerusalem and the West Bank. The worst violence for years there. Confrontations between Israeli police and Palestinian protesters, with 700 injured, the Palestinian Red Crescent says. The mounting anger over threatened evictions of Palestinian families. International calls for calm ignored.
Deeply concerned about the rocket attacks that we are seeing now that need to stop. And need to stop immediately.
Palestinians demanding President Biden intervene.
Let him look at our system and see how Palestinians live under this brutal occupation.
This morning, Israel once again reverberating to the sound of retaliation and reprisals. And this morning, Savannah, we're just learning that the Israeli Defense Minister has authorized the calling up of 5,000 reservists, a signal of Israel's determination, a signal to Washington that the situation could still escalate further. Savannah.
Keir Simmons on the story for us. Keir, thank you very much.
Hey, thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Find your favorite recipes, celebrity interviews, uplifting stories, shop our favorite deals, and so much more with the Today app. Download it now.
Hey guys, this is Tommy with Tommy Nation Politics. How's everyone doing today? Tommy Nation Politics.
Well, Chicago police have released the latest numbers on gun violence in the Windy City. According to that data, Chicago has seen 195 murders and nearly 1,000 shootings so far this year, and we're only in May.
It is a significant increase in shootings and homicides compared to the first 4 months of 2020.
One of those areas hit hardest by this violence is Chicago's 15th Ward. The Democrat alderman there, Raymond Lopez, gave me a tour of the area where I got to talk with those who are most impacted by this violence. Take a look.
That gun that it's so easy to get in these communities are destroying our communities. You know, we have 997 shootings within the last 5 months. We've had 6 kids under the age of 10 years old get killed. That shouldn't be.
There's some of my kids that have gotten killed. One of them was one of my 8th graders, and he was shot 2 weeks after he graduated.
Canary was gunned down while playing basketball. Jante died right here, walking home. It's easy to just get numb to the headline, 12-year-old shot, 7-year-old shot, 14-year-old shot. When you know these faces, when you know these names, and you know their families and their struggles, it's not a headline anymore. These are real lives that are being slaughtered on the streets of Chicago by bad policies, inept politicians.
Do you think leadership is doing enough to solve this problem?
No. No, I don't think so.
The mayor's office?
No.
The DA?
No. People make decisions from up here. But they need to come down and really look at what's going on in the neighborhoods.
All of these programs and all of this are fine, but what are we doing to help the people? They too busy playing politics.
Our biggest problems here in Chicago is that you can get caught with a gun and tomorrow you'll be out. Within hours you'll be out. There's no consequences.
You know, they got the ankle bracelet. They're still dealing out there.
I'd like for them to tell my families how it's okay for someone who has multiple gun charges to be back in the neighborhood, shooting again. They need to start seeing the reality of what they do from the eyes of the people most impacted.
You're a Democrat. You don't care about the partisan politics.
I get a lot of grief from my own colleagues in city council. It's my kids that are dying because of the games politicians play. And if that means as a Democrat, I'm the odd man out, so be it.
When they're getting 3,600 guns off the streets within 5 months, we got a problem. And if we don't address that problem, it's gonna get bigger.
The problem is not the police. Let's go to the root of the problem. You want to fix something? Start at home. Because it all starts in the house.
They don't start that way. I think a lot of times it's the support that they don't have at home.
What age do you normally see the change starts to happen?
I'm gonna be very honest. Right now, I have a first grader.
No way.
A first grader hanging around with 20-year-olds. What is he gonna pick up from there?
Politicians, police can be partners, but at the end of the day, it has to be the person in that house with their families saying that this is our block and this is how we want it to be. When people rise up and take ownership of their own neighborhoods and say, I want better, and they work for it, that's how you end the violence.
Where most see obstacles, a few see opportunities. If you'd expected life to be easy, you would have to stay at home. An inner voice has been guiding you to seek answers, seek the truth. You're not here.
Hey guys, this is Tommy with Tommy Nation Politics.
Your new independent,
how's everyone doing today?
Progressive media platform. A Gangster's Paradise. Free thinking, innovative, totally open-minded. Make sure you go to the website www.tommynationpolitics to get help, notified if videos are released, or if you would like to assist with the innovative and progressive ideas. I'm always game for collaboration. Find it, share the truth, buckle up. Life isn't complex and difficult, or as easy as we like to make it. Check out my podcast on Anchor FM and everywhere you can find podcasts. Join the movement to know the truth and succeed at life. Hi guys, Tommy with Tommy Nation Politics. Also, you can go to facebook.com/Tommy Nation Politics. Never hesitate to contact me and let me know how I can help progress the discourse or psychoactively enlighten the amygdala. This is the Tommy Nation Tuesday live stream. We are streaming on Twitch, Trovo, YouTube, Discord, Facebook. Any partisans who are engaging on the chat might be met with the life-changing opportunity of mental redemption from social servitude. Be free-thinking, innovative, totally open-minded. Gangster's Paradise. How do we define a criminal enterprise? A criminal organization is a society of associates with defined leadership and internal organization that identifies with or claims control over territory in a community or engages either individually or collectively in illegal, possibly violent behavior. You have heard of the Bloods and the Crips, the Hells Angels, the Bandidos, the Italian Mafia, and the Russian mob. Well, these street gangs, biker gangs, and mafiosos have nothing on the two largest, most powerful and dangerous criminal gangs in the United States. The two apex control trillions of dollars, assets, maintaining unquestioned loyalty of more than 100 million Americans. Their gang influence extends beyond the United States to much of the modern world. The two most dangerous criminal gangs in the United States are known as the Democratic Party and the Republican Party. The Republicans and Democrats have McCarthyism views about anyone who disrupts the timeshare of power maintenance they have. Through eras of time, sharing of power and influence, the Democrats and Republicans have become a society of associates. Yes, absolutely. The parties have compromised all ideologies, forming only a view of two. Do the two parties have defined leaders and internal organizations? Absolutely. In gerrymandered communities, entrenched in states with exorbitantly funded national political machines, Democrats and Republicans identify with and claim control over territory and communities. Absolutely. Turn on any media stream in the United States and you will see politicians, pundits, and journalists emphasizing gang member affiliations and allegiance. Senator so-and-so, Republican from fill-in-the-blank. Governor so-and-so, Democrat from fill-in-the-blank. Gang members proudly displaying their colors while fervently espousing party rhetoric without pretense of serving any wider constituency. See what I mean? Starting to seem plausible now, isn't it? But engaging in criminal behavior, that's going too far. Is it really? Criminal behavior validates the adage, power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. In a Darwinian world, it is survival of the fittest after all, disregarding for the time being the corruption often rearing its ugly head at the local and state levels. Let us look into the feds, dogs off the leash, protectors of the property, protectors of the rich, maintainers of the status quo. We are experiencing, and have been experiencing for some time, the institutionalization of corruption. The corruption is so corrosive, average citizens are forced into hyper-competitive free-for-all just to keep their heads above water. No one seems to have the time or perspective to ask, is there a better way? If you are a registered Democrat or Republican, I know you're still right now enraged that someone dared suggest that your party, your team, engages in criminal activity. Let us examine that notion more closely. Still, at the federal level, choose your party, choose your administration, and notice that the emergent themes are as follows: the big sell, the arguments, the divisive rhetoric, government grabbing more control over every aspect of Americans, the freedoms and liberties of us and our posterity slipping away, government seizing control over every increasing share of public wealth, government deciding who wins and who loses, government officials determine which of their benefactors gain and which citizens, most regularly from the productive class, lose. Government exerts absolute control over the instruments of national power and regularly uses those instruments to kill or suppress poor people all around the world, ensuring money keeps flowing into the right hands. The governing mantra of both political parties, though not published publicly, is do whatever it takes, to whomever it takes, to ensure we maintain power. Lie, cheat, steal. We welcome to our modern American democracy a criminal enterprise. That is what we have. If you disagree with my premise, then when your party is in power and you're quite happy with the way things are and won't need to read on or take any kind of reflection about what can be done about the sharecropping in a free land, the United States of America. If you've moved on from a we're all in this together, World War II cultural mentality, to an every man for himself Mad Max scenario, well, this COVID pandemic crisis is a calling card pointing out the obvious. It is time to resurrect fundamental principles again. It is time to reset society that we can actually advance together for a greater good. Unfortunately, too many of us are stuck in the fight to get ours. It's time to stop fighting. It's time to identify with yourself and individualism, your friends and family, not gangs, not affiliations. Politics to human beings that are part of an integrated global family must consist of an altogether more sociable attitude.
Somebody bomb a school and all these people get killed, so the United States feel like, ooh, that's messed up, we got to go show them who's the real killers. That's the same mentality these gangsters get. You know what I mean? So until they stop that mentality, we won't stop.
We must refuse to divert the power and status of our country, our sovereign country, a beacon on a hill. Divert the power and authority back to the people and not to our politicians. Who are we the people supposed to fulfill that will? Start small by relying on fundamental principles of honesty and integrity. Tell the truth, be honest and transparent, dealing with everyone. Do what is right and in the best interests of people and all people. Only entertain the advice and direction of men and women of character, people who have proven they are trustworthy and who have demonstrated they are interested in the greater good. These are challenging times, not a time for gang warfare and status quo political maneuvering. It is time for us to come together, empower the gangs no longer, make a radical change. Tommy Nation Politics. Been spending most our lives living in a gangster's paradise. We've been spending most our lives living in a gangster's paradise. Guys, this is Tommy with Tommy Nation Politics. Yeah, I recorded that earlier because I wanted to get it right. I wanted to make sure I wasn't choking on my words. I wrote it down. I went through a teleprompter, so I need to deliver that message to you. We need to end the gang warfare. We need to end our bandwagon mentality, our non-free thought, our mundane routine existence. So what a day it's been on Tommy Nation Politics, and throughout the world we have a million things to talk about today. But before we do, I just want to make sure that you guys know that you can donate to the show. TNP, Tommy Nation Politics, one word, capital T, capital N, capital P, to Cash App or PayPal. And thank you guys. The chat is open as well. If you want to get in your little, you have a say, go ahead, reach out and touch somebody's hand. Make the world a better place if you can. Lord knows we need it. So two main things that happened today, guys. I just want to get this across. I want to make sure that you guys know that I'm on the news. I'm on the scent. I just got dinged right now. I've been very upset about this. The 24 people killed in the Gaza Strip. But I just got dinged that our Congress just voted today as well. Guys, you want to talk about gang warfare? Let's talk about gang warfare. So the Fairness in Orphan Drug Exclusivity Act. Fairness in Orphan Drug Exclusivity Act, H.R. 1629, went through Congress to amend the Federal Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act with respect to limitations on exclusive approval or licensure of orphan drugs and for other purposes. You would think that people don't want to have patents on a vaccine at a time when a pandemic could mutate, and then all of your vaccinations would be rendered obsolete with this new strand, right? Our country is so gang-banging greedy that we have a billionaire putting a patent on a vaccine. His name is Bill Gates. He's going through a divorce. Everybody, please be nice to him. Please be nice to this guy. Even though he has patents on a vaccine, third world countries can't get it, guys, because of his patent on a vaccine. Do you understand, guys? Now, I've been having the biggest fight with right-wingers, guys, because the right-wingers don't seem to understand that the rich buy the politicians, and the politicians in turn give them legislation. They have the whole politicians buy, because of the media, right? They miss the step of the politicians deliver for their donors. That's the only thing the politicians do. The only thing the politicians ever do is deliver for the donors. Guys, it didn't even fucking pass the fucking House. Didn't even pass the House of Representatives. Roll call. 250, yay. 168, nay. It got a majority of the vote. What it needed was the conventional wisdom and the social norms, guys. What it needed was the 2/3 majority in the House of Representatives, because we're running out of budget resolutions and little slick willies, little games and other things. So on this one, guys, Chuck Schumer not to the rescue. Nancy Pelosi not to the rescue. The Patents and Copyrights Act to limit on life-saving drugs, nay. Didn't even pass the House, guys. Tell me, why are we so blind to see that the ones you hurt are you and me? Democratic House, Democratic Senate, Democratic presidency. Can we get a minimum wage? Senate parliamentarian. Can we get exclusivity limitations act? I'm sorry, that didn't pass the conventional wisdom and social norms 2/3 majority of the House, and we don't give a shit. We could have used some stupid slick trick that we found out from 1937, but we didn't give a shit. We lip service. We give you virtue signaling. We give you, oh, shucks, it didn't pass. I wonder how the mainstream media is fucking reporting that shit right now. I don't know, guys. I don't pay attention to the news. You know me and CNN. We don't get along very well. It's amazing. Now, let's not forget also our fucking gang affiliates. Our wonderful gang affiliates, guys. We've got Israel letting loose as Joe Biden would say, letting loose the dogs of war. 24 killed, including children, as Israel fires airstrikes on Gaza Strip. They fired airstrikes on an open air prison, guys. Our fucking wonderful allies. We couldn't ask for better allies than the Saudis, who fuck kids in their own camps, and Israel, who fucking fires guns into a. It's like shooting fish in a barrel. It is. Tell me how I'm wrong. Anybody who supports Israel right now, guys, okay, forget your like delusion of how the rapture is going to come back and Jesus is going to be in Israel and we're all going to fucking float in the air. Forget that one little fucking delusion for 1 minute. And let's pretend that Israel didn't crucify Jesus. Like, I'm trying to be very careful. I'm not anti-Semitic in any way. It's not all the Jews. It's the government of Israel. That is out of control. They've been out of control for quite some time. Now, Hamas fired back with 35 fucking weapons, 35 missiles. Unfortunately, Barack Obama gave them a dome, so that didn't do anything to them. It's like literally like a fish spitting in your face. They didn't do a goddamn thing. Six Israelites were injured. That sucks. It really does. Violence sucks. Gang warfare sucks. Why? Why did this happen, guys? Israel has unleashed new airstrikes on Gaza, hitting multiple high-rise buildings, including the home of a Hamas field commander, and 2 border tunnels dug by militants. 2 border tunnels dug by militants. This is the Associated Press, guys. So, 2 border tunnels dug by militants means we're trying to get out of this open-air prison. Because you have us in an open-air prison. You just fired into an open-air prison your airstrikes. Israeli media reports that a rocket struck an empty school Tuesday in the coastal city of Ashkelon, not far from the Gaza Strip. Israel's home front command had ordered the closure of schools on Monday. So I guess they knew they were going to hit these empty schools. And also, guys, we are not hitting military bases. We're not hitting military fucking targets, guys. Did y'all realize that when we're hitting schools? We're not hitting military targets when we're hitting schools. I just want to make that clear, guys. Escalation early Tuesday was sparked by weeks of tensions in contested Jerusalem. What were the tensions? So Gaza health officials said 24 Palestinians have been killed in Gaza, most by airstrikes, since cross-border fighting erupted. They said 9 children were among the dead. Military targets. It's almost like our drone strikes. Our drone strikes don't hit military targets either. We're killing children every day with our drone strikes. Now the Israelis following suit, following in our decadent gang-banging behavior. The Israeli military said 15 of the dead were militants. Oh, that's what they said. The Israeli military said this. So 15 of the dead were militants. 9 of them were children. 9 plus 15. So that's 24, right? It's like it's like Chauvin, guys. It's like, we know he's done this before. I knew, guys. Before it came out that Derek Chauvin was all indicted for sitting on someone else's neck, standing on someone else's necks. I knew that he'd already done it before, guys. Why? He looked so comfortable on George Floyd's neck. Israel and Netanyahu, they look super comfortable. Shooting in a barrel. The open air prison prisoners in the Gaza Strip. You know what's funny, guys? This is what I found was funny. An Egyptian intelligence office official says Egypt is engaged in intensive talks with Israel and Gaza militants on reaching a ceasefire to end the latest round of fighting. How about that, guys? So if you believe in the stories of the Bible, the sons of Israel, Jacob and Esau, I believe, they're the sons of Israel. Jacob is Israel. Esau and what is it? There was two sons anyway. So anyway, then there was Ishmael and Isaac. Ishmael and Isaac, there you go. That's the ones. All right, guys. So anyway, so they go down to Egypt, right? Let my people go and shit. Who is none other trying to settle everyone down and be the adult, but Egypt. Egypt has been, as the official said, the efforts began by Egypt intelligence later this afternoon. As militants were trying to reach a ceasefire. So now Egypt is getting between the sons of Isaac and the sons of Ishmael, your own buddies that you drowned in the Red Sea. If you believe, it's so ironic. It's so unironic how when violence happens, guys, it's not Gog and Magog, it's George W. Bush. It's so ironic, guys, how it's not Jacob and Isaac. It's the Netanyahu's right-wing government of Israel in an open-air prison, projecting God knows what. I heard Netanyahu talking today. He's literally wanting to increase strikes, guys. He wants to increase strikes. Have we heard from Joe Biden? Now, Joe Biden, he's got a busy schedule of no press conferences. He's got a busy schedule of trying to tell his donors these dirty poors are going to be off unemployment soon. Please chill. Get off my back, buddy. His donors are foaming at the mouth, wanting us to go back to shitty-ass corporate jobs. He's not dealing with this right now. Joe Biden doesn't give a shit about this. He's too busy dealing with McDonald's and all of the other shitty corporate places that don't pay $15 an hour. He's trying to get them to chill the fuck out. They're attacking him every day and his stupid press secretary, Jen Psaki. Please get these fuckers, get these dirty poors off my unemployment. We need them back in our slave quarters. We need the Israelites back in Egypt. That's what's going on in the United States. So Israel, Egypt has become Israel has become Egypt in the Middle East. We have become Egypt in the United States of America. And the gang warfare continues, guys. Meanwhile, we're getting out of Afghanistan. Trump made the deal in May to get out in May. We're already overstaying our visit, guys. We've been overstaying our visit, by the way, for 15 years. We've been almost in there for 20 years. One more year, we're going to go watch. He wants to do it in a symbolic way, because Democrats are always about virtue signaling, of course. Symbolologically, we're going to get out 9/11. Because that's when George W. Bush lied us into a war that, he began lying us into a war where there were no weapons of mass destruction because of 9/11. You see that, guys? It wasn't because of 9/11. We went into Afghanistan. It was because of oil and the Saudis. So, but symbolologically, to make your heart warm and for you to buy some towels at Target, maybe we'll print out some posters. We're going to get out of Afghanistan in 9/11, except we're going to probably stay in the region. And Joe Biden's not in charge. I don't know if y'all know this, but he's been trying to get out ever since he became president. They don't want him to. He had to try to sell us his little plan of 9/11. He thought that was super cute. That was his plan. We're not getting out, though. I promise you, we're not. Can't wait to be there when we're not. Because I'm going to be the one calling Joe Biden a liar to his face and say, look, buddy, I was a Democratic caucus. You know the thing. Guys, in dark times, we need to do three things. Free thinking, innovativeness, totally open-minded.
The first year that a majority of American television households owned color TVs. Each of the big three networks broadcasted their election coverage in color.
Hey guys, this is Tommy with Tommy Nation Politics. How's everyone doing today?
The America of John McCain is the America of the revolution. Fighters with no stomach for the summer soldier and the sunshine patriot, making the world anew with the bells of liberty. The America of John McCain is the America of Abraham Lincoln.
That was John McCain's daughter speaking at a service remembering her father after the former presidential candidate died last week. And she wasn't the only one to give McCain a glowing tribute. George Bush, Barack Obama, and Bernie Sanders are just some of the political heavyweights who praised the late Republican senator. But others haven't been so complimentary. In fact, many accuse McCain of being a warmongering racist.
From Washington, D.C., I think. Where are you, Roland?
I'm in D.C. driving to the train station. Reverend Jackson has his Rainbow Push Wall Street conference, and so I'm going to hit his ass.
Supreme Court judges, allegedly because some of those judges spoke about the issue of gerrymandering during the course of their campaign. And we elect our Supreme Court judges in Pennsylvania. So another reason why off-year elections are important. And so because the Democrats have the majority in the Pennsylvania Supreme Court throughout all those districts. And so so we're clear, putting it in context, we have 1 million more Democrats in Pennsylvania than we have Republicans. Yet the lines were drawn in 2011 so that you have 13 Republican congresspeople and 5 Democratic congresspeople, even though you have 1 million more Democrats in the state than you have Republicans. That's how gangster this stuff is.
Yeah, that's gangster.
Now, you use the right word, gangster. We saw the exact same thing, Republicans in North Carolina, when Democrats got control of the state Supreme Court, a 4-3 majority. They tried to strip the state Supreme Court of its power and give it to a lower court. I mean, this is what I keep trying to explain to people. Republicans don't care. They're not trying to play fair. They're not trying to say, let's all get along. This is pure power, and they are doing things Democrats will be scared to do.
A well-dressed man standing just over 5 feet tall, Paul Kelly hailed from New York's seedy 5 Points section, an area known for gangs, murder, and screams like a mad cacophony deep into the night. Considered to be both cunning and clever, Kelly was an inventive criminal. He was highly intelligent and was fluent in Italian, French, Spanish, and of course English. He was the first to conceive of crime as an organized business and became, for all intents and purposes, the first modern-day underworld boss. After taking over the vicious 5 Points gang, Kelly set out to enlarge its numbers and its borders. He had an eye for youthful talent and recruited such notables to his gang like Al Capone, Johnny Torrio, Frankie Yale, Charlie Luciano, and a host of other lethal and later celebrated
Andre
mobsters.
Carson was on television talking about possible impeachment proceedings and obviously how the administration is reluctant to participate and partake in any of these hearings, any inquiry, and will not reply to subpoenas and have done complete obstruction. So let's see what Congressman Carson had to say about it.
The president said today he's trying to figure out who the whistleblower is. The whistleblower's attorney has responded saying that those attacks are, and what has been said are putting their client in danger. What's your read?
Well, we're going to do whatever we can to make sure that the identity of the whistleblower is protected. We're working with DNI Director McGuire to make sure the attorneys get the proper clearances, and so that justice is served. I would hope that this president does not act in a way that is reminiscent of a mob figure. And if he sees himself as such, he will be dealt with as such.
What does that mean?
It means that if he wants to be a gangster, then we're going to have to uphold the law and treat him like a gangster.
Explain President Trump to us and assess the massive response to him.
Well, Trump is
You know, I think there are a number of illusions about Trump. If you take a look at the Trump phenomenon, it's not very surprising. Think back for the last 10 or 15 years over Republican Party primaries, and remember what happened during the primaries. Each primary, when some candidate rose from the base, they were so outlandish that the Republican establishment tried to crush them and succeeded in doing it. Michelle Bachmann, Herman Cain, Rick Santorum, anyone who was coming out of the base was totally unacceptable to the establishment. The change in 2016 is they couldn't crush him. But the interesting question is, why was this happening? Why, in election after election, was the voting base producing a candidate utterly intolerable to the establishment? And the answer to that is, if you think about that, the answer is not very hard to discover. Since the 1970s, during this neoliberal period, both of the political parties have shifted to the right. The Democrats, by the 1970s, have pretty much abandoned the working class. In the last gasp of more or less progressive Democratic Party legislative proposals was the Humphrey Hawkins Full Employment Act in 1978, which Carter watered down so that it had no teeth, just became voluntary. But the Democrats had pretty much abandoned the working class. They became pretty much what used to be called moderate Republicans. Meanwhile, the Republicans shifted so far to the right that they went completely off the spectrum. Two of the leading political analysts of the American Enterprise Institute, Thomas Mann, Norman Ornstein, about 5 or 10 years ago, described the Republican Party as what they called a radical insurgency that has abandoned parliamentary politics. Well, why did that happen? It happened because the Republicans face a difficult problem. They have a primary constituency, a real constituency, extreme wealth and corporate power. That's who they have to serve. That's their constituency. You can't get votes that way, so you have to do something else to get votes. What do you do to get votes? This was begun by Richard Nixon with the Southern strategy, try to pick up racists in the South. The mid-1970s, Paul Weyrich, one of the Republican strategists, hit on a brilliant idea. Northern Catholics voted Democratic, tended to vote Democratic, a lot of them working class. The Republicans could pick up that vote by pretending, crucially, pretending to be opposed to abortion. By the same pretense, they could pick up the evangelical vote. Those are big votes, evangelicals, Northern Catholics. Notice the word pretense, it's crucial. You go back to the 1960s, every leading Republican figure was strongly what we call now pro-choice. The Republican Party position was, that's Ronald Reagan, George H.W. Bush, all the leadership. Their position was abortion is not the government's business. It's a private business. Government has nothing to say about it. They turned almost on a dime in order to try to pick up a voting base on what are called cultural issues. Same with gun rights. The gun rights become a matter of holy writ because you can pick up part of the population that way. In fact, what they've done is put together a coalition of voters based on issues that are basically tolerable to the establishment, but they don't like it. Okay, and they've got to hold those two constituencies together. The real constituency of wealth and corporate power, they're taken care of by the actual legislation. So if you look at the legislation under Trump, it's just lavish gifts to the wealth and the corporate sector. The tax bill, the deregulation, every case in point. That's kind of the job of Mitch McConnell and Paul Ryan, those guys. They serve the real constituency. Meanwhile, Trump has to maintain the voting constituency with one outrageous position after another that appeals to some sector of the voting base. And he's doing it very skillfully. It's just as a political manipulation, it's skillful. Work for the rich and the powerful, shaft everybody else, but get their votes. It's not an easy trick. And he's carrying it off, and I should say the Democrats are helping him. They are. Take the focus on Russiagate. What's that all about? I mean, it was pretty obvious at the beginning that you're not going to find anything very serious about Russian interference in elections. I mean, for one thing, it's undetectable. I mean, in the 2016 election, the Senate and the House went the same way as the executive, but nobody claims there was Russian interference there. In fact, Russian interference in the election, if it existed, was very slight, much less, say, than interference by, say, Israel. Israel, the prime minister, Netanyahu, goes to Congress, talks to a joint session of Congress without even informing the White House to attack Obama's policies.
Y'all remember that?
Dramatic interference.
Y'all remember that? Interference?
Whatever the Russians tried, it's not going to be anything like
Netanyahu visited our Congress without the permission of our president?
There's no interference in elections.
How out of control is this guy?
To compare with campaign funding. Remember that campaign funding alone gives you a very high prediction of electoral outcome.
While organizing all rackets in his area, Kelly established close political ties with the corrupt Tammany Hall political machine, which controlled with absolute power the 5-point section and neighboring districts. Tammany Hall exacted tribute on all illegal activities within their control. And Paul Kelly, he was smart. He gladly paid these Tammany politicians, who in turn protected his rising criminal empire.
Now, recently released FBI documents from decades ago find the family of Nancy Pelosi might have had deep ties to organized crime. One America's Christian Rose examines this report.
The fact is, a wall is an immorality. We're not doing a wall. Does anybody have any doubt that we're not doing a wall?
House Speaker Nancy Pelosi continues to rally support against President Trump's efforts towards border security and his crackdown on organized crime. Amid the ongoing talks on funding for the border wall, Pelosi has repeatedly doubled down on her resistance to ending the influx of drugs and MS-13 gang members into the U.S.
The MS-13 lover, Nancy Pelosi. She loves MS-13. Can you imagine? Remember? I said they're animals, and she said, how dare you say that?
Some say there could be something more than partisan politics behind Pelosi's statements and actions. And a batch of recently released FBI files from more than half a century ago might provide a clue. According to documents dating back to 1947, then FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover suspected Pelosi's father, also a prominent figure in the Democrat Party, of ties to the mafia.
Without law and order, society will destroy itself.
Pelosi's father, Thomas D'Alessandro Jr., was a Democrat congressman from Maryland between 1939 and 47, and the mayor of Baltimore from 1947 to 59. He drew the attention of the FBI in the mid-40s when the Bureau was investigating one of Baltimore's top mafia bosses, Benjamin Magliano, also known as Benny Trotza. The Bureau found Magliano was frequently accompanied by D'Alessandro, whose daughter Nancy was 7 years old at the time.
She'll cut your head off and you won't even know you're bleeding. That's all you need to know about her. No one ever won betting against Nancy Pelosi.
Subsequently, the Bureau examined reports that the Baltimore Mafia was working with D'Alessandro to secure his numerous re-elections to Congress in the early 1940s. At the time, reports alleged Pelosi's father was protecting criminals and receiving bribes. After the Republican Party took control of Congress in the 1946 election, the Baltimore crew allegedly helped D'Alessandro become mayor of their town. This could explain Pelosi's warm feelings towards organized crime, as the mafia supposedly helped her family during the hard times of economic depression and war.
So very simply, if you want more caravans and more crime, because crime comes with it, vote for the Democrats. Vote for them.
The FBI's probe into Pelosi's father didn't produce any arrests, charges or indictments. Despite Hoover's warnings of public corruption, mob ties and favoritism in the office of Baltimore mayor, President John Kennedy appointed D'Alessandro as member of the U.S. Renegotiation Board in 1961. His 21-year-old daughter Nancy was making her first steps in Democrat politics at the time.
We want every member of Congress to respect the truth.
Christian Rose, One American News.
Want to see more videos like this? Click on the link below and subscribe to One American News on YouTube.
Completely useless. It's time to keep voting every incumbent out of office. And Tom in Delaware writes, the Democrats have joined the Republicans in scuffling the Constitution. I am less afraid of a terrorist attack than I am of my own government.
You know, with respect to the question, though, about the Democrats taking control of the Congress, I think the Democrats have pushed extremely hard to change this president's course.
The Democratic leadership has, in sum, claimed a compromise with the administration, in which the only things truly compromised are the trust of the voters, the ethics of the Democrats, and the lives of our brave and doomed friends and family in Iraq. Mr. Bush has failed, Mr. Warner has failed, Mr. Reid has failed. So, who among us will stop this war of lies? To he or she fall the figurative keys to the nation. To all the others, presidents and majority leaders and candidates and rank-and-file congressmen and senators of either party, there is only blame for this shameful and bipartisan betrayal.
You have two political parties, the Republicans and the Democrats, that are simply, those two parties are simply opposite wings of the same bird, and they're giving the bird to the American people.
I think the large majority of the American people are ready for changes, and that the base of the Republican Party and the base of the Democratic Party is pretty small compared to the people who are disgruntled.
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
President Eisenhower was absolutely right, and he understood. Think about it. If the war was a money loser for Wall Street, would we still be at war?
The military-industrial complex not only controls our government lock, stock, and barrel, but they control our culture.
This is done by emphasizing property rights and freedom of the individuals, making sure that the powerful special interests don't control Washington, that the military-industrial complex doesn't suck away all the wealth of the country, and then we will have prosperity. This is what we need.
I'm tired of seeing gravel in these debates. I'm tired of seeing Kucinich. On the Republican side, Ron Paul, he's a joy to watch, I got to admit, but I don't want to hear these guys. They're not the real candidates.
So what do you want to hear?
Hey guys, this is Tommy with Tommy Nation Politics. How's everyone doing today? Tommy Nation Politics.
My name is Becky. And my name is Emily. And we are from the Federalist Party. We can do whatever we want that's necessary and proper. And we love the elastic claw. We have the most power. High five!
Jimmy, and I'm a part of the Democratic Republican Party, and I'm hating on tariffs because they're raising the price of goods. I can't even afford a pick.
Hi, my name is Dave Wilson, and I'm a member of the Federalist Party. Hi, my name is Chip Smith. I'm also a member of the Federalist Party because I think taxes should be collected by the federal government. Damn protesters. Yeah, we need a strong government.
For Americans, the colors red and blue are deeply linked to the Republican and Democratic parties, but it's really only been that way since the 2000 election. After all, this is what election night results used to look like on American TV.
Gentlemen, let me tell you this, if they ever teach this machine to talk, you and I, well, we're out of business.
The wide adoption of color television in the late 1960s and 1970s changed all that. But it still would be several decades before the media settled on the color scheme we know today.
What are the hardest states to turn from blue to red, and what are the easy ones?
President Obama has won every one of these blue states.
He has to turn states that have been voting blue.
To understand where this red state, blue state business comes from, let's go back to the very first time a television network used color maps to report election results. That happened in 1972, which also was the first year that a majority of American television households owned color TVs. Each of the big three networks broadcasted their election coverage in color. But here's what CBS did to differentiate themselves from their competition. They created the first color election map in American television history. And just look at Alabama on CBS's map. That oh-so-reliable conservative state, it was colored pure Republican blue. No, your eyes were not deceiving you. The states that Republican Richard Nixon won that night in his 1972 landslide victory were colored blue on the CBS map. CBS's great broadcast innovation would soon inspire the other networks to introduce red and blue maps to their own election night broadcasts. For its part, CBS would keep the Republican blue and Democratic red scheme through the 1980 election.
For Reagan, well, it's a different story. They're shown in blue, and this country is almost solidly in the Reagan colors tonight.
Those pairings may seem odd today, but they weren't back then. That's because blue, as NPR's Ron Elving has noted, was a color closely associated with the Union Army, led by Republican Abraham Lincoln. Red, on the other hand, was a color associated with leftists and left-leaning parties throughout the world, as it is today. In fact, NBC's 1976 election chief told the Smithsonian Magazine that it was British Tory blue and Labour Party red that influenced NBC to go with this color scheme for 20 years.
You're beginning to look like a suburban swimming pool over there.
Walter Mondale, the winner of the state of Minnesota, colored red tonight for Walter Mondale.
It is shaping up as a George Bush map as we look at it back there.
It certainly is, Tom.
He goes into the Clinton column after having voted with the Republicans the last 3 times. And as you can see, we color in the state of Kentucky.
ABC News, on the other hand, had its own state color logic.
Red states are states that we have projected having gone for Mr. Reagan. Red are Reagan. That's why we chose red.
By 1996, ABC and CBS had used the now familiar Democratic blue states and Republican red states on their maps over several election cycles. So NBC decided to make the switch too for a very simple reason.
NBC decided to adapt the same color pattern as ABC and CBS so as not to have a confusion for the viewers.
But it wasn't until the 2000 election that the political concept or term red state versus blue state took hold. On that election night, the network anchors and pundits relied heavily on the colored maps to explain how close the race was between George W. Bush and Al Gore. Very soon, those red states and blue states that the country saw over and over again on TV became rooted in American culture. David Letterman was one of the earliest cultural figures to pick up on this just a few days after the 2000 election.
Candidates have worked out a compromise, and thank God not a minute too soon. Here's how it's going to go. George W. Bush will be president for the red states. Al W. Gore will be president for the blue states, and that's impressive.
Those same television maps would also help make red state and blue state a popular term among political pundits and newspaper headline writers. It was useful shorthand as memories of the 2000 election were burned into the American psyche. Over time, the term came to mean not just the states that voted for Bush and Gore, but also a way to describe the cultural values associated with American electoral geography.
Political parties, it's hard to imagine American life without them. And in our country, where two major parties reign supreme, the dynamic can feel like good versus evil, right versus wrong, or us versus them. But life isn't black and white. Are political parties to blame for the polarizing place we are now? And what would happen if they disappeared?
More seriously.
We're so used to the never-ending struggle between the Republican and Democratic parties that it might have surprised you to hear in our episode about electing Supreme Court justices that the Founding Fathers didn't want political parties in the United States. In fact, Thomas Jefferson once said, "If I could not go to heaven but with a party, I would not go there at all." So where did they come from? Well, get this. Thomas Jefferson ended up eating his words and founded one of the first political parties, the Democratic Republicans, the answer to the Federalist Party, which had formed around Alexander Hamilton and his desire for a strong central government.
This gets to a brass tacks, just like what is a political party. This isn't something that's created by a constitution. These emerge extra-constitutionally, extra-legally. E. Schatzsnyder called a political party an organized effort to get control of the government.
Where has this gotten us? Well, some people would say that the political gridlock we experience today is all due to political parties. Not only are politicians of different parties not getting along, average citizens find it hard to talk to people with differing political views. According to the Pew Research Center, more than half of Democrats say the Republican Party scares them, while nearly half of Republicans say the same thing about Democrats.
There's a great book by Liliana Mason this year that basically talks about how all of our personal values have become deeply intertwined with political ideology. It used to be in the 60s and 70s, you asked parents, how did you feel about your children marrying someone of the opposite race? And a very healthy majority would not be in favor. But someone of the opposite party, no problem. Now that is split. And parents are deeply concerned about their children marrying someone of the opposite party.
Do the benefits outweigh the drawbacks, or vice versa? If we created America from scratch today, would we outlaw political parties? Go back to our roots, keep them out of politics entirely. Outlawing political parties might not be the most practical idea for the U.S. After all, they weren't a part of our country when it was first started, but they came into being naturally over time.
What would it take to outlaw political parties? What political parties are fundamentally not legalized in the first place. They are just the manifestation of people coming together in a group and organizing their political behavior in a certain way. If you want to imagine a system that outlaws that, you are imagining a system that significantly curbs people's ability to express political views and to coordinate their political behavior with other people. It would precisely be snuffing out the liberty that is both the lifeblood of democracy as well as the lifeblood of parties.
Focusing solely on Democrats and Republicans leaves out an important factor. The United States third parties.
What do they
played
do?
an important part in our history too.
Richard Hofstadter, a historian, once said that
Dude with the glasses.
in American
I like
history, third parties are like
I like guys with
bees.
glasses.
Once they sting, they die. But they do sting.
They can still hold the major parties accountable. When a lot of elections are close, every vote counts. So even worrying about potential voters voting for a third-party candidate, that gives an incentive for the major parties to try to appeal to those third-party voters. So one important thing that third parties have done in American politics is that they've spurred change within one or both of the major parties.
So the most famous example of that would be the Whig Party and the Democratic Party in the middle of the 19th century being internally divided over the question of slavery. It took a third-party effort connected to grassroots movements for abolition to sufficiently, at the local level, kind of threaten to bump them off in elections or to throw the election to the Democrat in a kind of spoiler race. And in that case, the third party ended up essentially taking over the Whig Party. The Whig Party split so completely that the Republican Party grew in its stead and took a lot of northern Whigs with them.
What if we diversified the playing field by increasing the number of major political parties, giving people more options, more ways to identify? Would it diminish the prevailing us versus them narrative? Some experts say in order to do this, it would take a rewrite of our political system. You see, in our presidential elections, each state, except for Nebraska and Maine, gives all of its electoral votes to the winning candidate in a winner-takes-all contest. This discourages citizens from voting for third-party candidates because this is seen as throwing your vote away, since there isn't a prize for winning even the second most votes.
So we would need to make changes to election laws in order to help third parties win office. So each district elects one representative, and it's just of all the candidates, the one that wins the most votes wins that seat. In those countries with multi-member districts, a party that comes in third place can win the third most seats. In the United States, if you come in third place, you win nothing. You have to come in first place.
You have a system where right now, invariably, the votes are going to go to the top two, Republican or Democrat big party candidates. The only role that these third parties end up playing tends to be a spoiler role. In a ranked choice voting system, you have a chance for people to vote for a third party without it playing a spoiler role. And if enough people vote for that third party as, say, their second choice, you can end up actually having third party candidates win.
We're looking at Maine for our Local Matters series. Next month, the Pine Tree State will try out a new form of voting in which people can vote for more than one candidate. It's called ranked choice voting.
So ranked choice voting is a system where instead of voting for just one candidate, you are able to rank all of your candidates in the order of your preference. And so if my first choice candidate doesn't win, my vote isn't just thrown out, it then accrues to my second candidate. And if that candidate doesn't get a majority, then my third candidate is counted, right? And so forth until you get to a majority. So I'd say the biggest pros are twofold. One, it gives voters more choice, right? You no longer have a situation where you shouldn't vote for the candidate that is really your number one choice. So it tends to increase voter turnout. And it provides different incentives for candidates. Much less negative campaigning, much more positive and constructive campaigning.
If people are dissatisfied with the major parties, one thing you do is try to change them, and one way to change them is through influencing who do they nominate for the general election. So that's where you can get involved in a primary election. If you care about the political process, we focus a lot on voting, but there's a lot of other stuff you could do. You could volunteer for a candidate's campaign. You can donate money. You can attend a political rally to voice your opinion. And there's different strategies you can use. You can either try to work from within a party, or you can go kind of from the outsider route. You can support a third party candidate, or you could put more effort in supporting an interest group. That interest group could then help transform one of the two major parties. A lot of options that people have in trying to decide, where can I get involved to make a difference.
Are you playing games with us right now? Are you serious? What are the odds you run for president?
I don't know. 50-50.
50-50?
Yeah.
That's pretty high.
Yeah, 50 I might, 50 I won't.
When do you want to make that decision by?
We have to make it pretty soon because the difficult thing is this. I would have to get ballot access in all 50 states. The two gangs already have it in all 50 states. See, they make the rules. That's what makes it difficult. It's like playing a football game and then at halftime they'll change the rules on you. So I would have to get ballot access in all 50 states, and I must be allowed in the debates. But they control that too. The Democrats and Republicans control who can debate. And it's simple. If I can debate them, I can beat them.
A yes-no decision by the end of this year?
I don't know.
All right, thank you.
You're not going to pin me down on something like that. I live in Mexico right now, and I have a new job. I'll be working for the richest man in the world, Carlos Slim, because I can't get a job here in the media, but he's giving me one in Mexico. So I will be broadcasting to the United States off the grid, much like we broadcasted Radio Free Europe, where you got to be outside the country to get the truth to the country. We're much like East Berlin today. I cross that border driving every year. The only thing missing are the tanks at the border, and I'm sure they're on their way.
Do you think that adding a third party maybe decreases or increases governmental intrusion in your life?
It will decrease by far because it will be much harder to get things done. So
you agree with the bicameral system then, that essentially it has built-in gridlock?
It should be a workable system if you don't have two parties.
Workable, what do you mean?
Theoretically, our forefathers, many of them warned us steadfastly to not get involved into the party system, into the two-party system, or that political parties, that they're inherently evil. They inherently cause government to fail. Because what it does is it allows two groups to collectivize, and it allows the tyranny of the majority. There are the pendulum swings back and forth. The Republicans will be in there and they'll have power for 2 years, and then they'll have executive power for another 6 years. And then the pendulum swings the other way. The Democrats will have total power for 2 years, and then they'll have executive authority for another 6 years. So what we in essence have is we have 2 years of an extreme side that is able to push through anything they want to. Hashtag Obamacare, hashtag Patriot Act. And then we'll have 6 years of relative gridlock and stalemate, like we're in the middle with Trump right now, where they're throwing up this garbage impeachment and all of these other things in order to just stalemate the government, where they don't get anything done. And the more that you can create that stalemate, that means the more you're going to have a consensus required to get things done if you have more than a two-party system.
Finally today, my friend Tom Friedman passed on a story to me the other day that came to him from an advertising guy who had been at a seminar for ad people, and someone had asked the question, why didn't Burger King ever really go after McDonald's? In other words, why didn't they get dirty, go negative, try to take down the industry leader? The answer came back, first rule of advertising, never destroy the category. It's not worth destroying the hamburger industry just to take down your most successful competitor. The more I thought about that and the sorry state of American politics these days, the more it made me wonder. In their effort to destroy each other, are the Republican and Democratic parties on the verge of destroying the category, politics, the whole political system? We are not there yet, but as I watch our campaigns begin earlier and earlier, and as our government becomes more and more gridlocked, unable to do anything, we may be close. Remember when campaigns were the interval between governing? Now governing has become the brief interval between campaigns, and not just campaigns that are vicious, but as meaningless as they are mean.
So Raphael Warnock is in some trouble. Not really, but the right thinks he's in some trouble. I guess the Washington Free Beacon dug this video up of him talking about Republicans cutting taxes for the rich. And there's a lot of fake outrage about his description of said Republican politicians.
While others were sleeping, members of the United States Senate declared war and launched a vicious and evil attack on the most vulnerable people in America. Herod is on the loose. Herod is a cynical politician who's willing to kill children and kill the children's health program in order to preserve his own wealth and his own power. Hope is in the air, but Herod is on the loose. The hopes and the fears of all the years have met in thee tonight. And so on Friday night, the United States Senate decided by a slim majority to pick the pockets of the poor, the sick, the old, and the yet unborn in order to line the pockets of the ultra-rich. Don't tell me about gangsters and thugs on the streets. There are more gangsters and thugs in Washington, D.C., in the Capitol, than there are.
These are challenging times. Not a time for gang warfare and status quo political maneuvering.
I'm headed to the bottom of the bottle. I've been drowning, I've been floating away.
It is time for us to come together.
Every other dollar that I got in bed, I'm
let's overpower the gangs and make a radical change.
I ain't liking it, babe. I don't even wanna talk. I'm just smoking my haze. I've been stuck in my ways. I've been stuck here for days. I've been staring at the clock as the radio plays. I'm enslaved. Yeah. Rolling another, I'm stuck in my seat for the whole control of my speech. Yeah, I've been trying to get off this couch for a minute and a whole damn week. No kidding, I'm skinny, I cannot eat. Got a million motherfuckers that depend on me. Yeah, every friend in my family. From a girl, every fan I meet myself. I'm too on till I'm too off. Come down to make new thoughts, like jumping off of that rooftop. Hold my devil when I do nothing, make moves based on my mood drops. Like who's lost? Like who's lost? It's yo, steadily killing me, running my brain full of shame. I don't wanna lose it. Full of stage, trying to find my pain. I see the sun coming out of that rain. Minds ain't really not tame. I'ma never slow down. I'ma never behave. Stuck inside this prison, inside this cage. It's taking over.
Politico, today. Rare Schumer-McConnell showdown previews floor fight on Dems election bill. The sprawling proposal sets for its first votes Tuesday faces significant pushback from the state election officials to Joe Manchin, whose vote is a must-have. The typical state Senate Rules Committee hosted a rare dramatic showdown on Tuesday. The majority leader versus the minority leader, sparring over Democrats' expansive election and ethics bill. In dueling remarks, Chuck Schumer and Mitch McConnell each accused the other's party of trying to weaponize voting laws to expand its political power. That's the game, guys. The game isn't you or me. The game isn't the welfare of the country or the greater good. It is only one thing: to maintain their own power. And we, assisting them in that endeavor, are not patriots. We're slaves. Until next time, guys, this is Tommy with Tommy Nation Politics. Be free thinking, innovative, totally open-minded. This is Tommy Nation Politics.